It's BS that people 30 or 40 years ago didn't have it easier. Father of GF is a teacher. He has a big house, big property, 3 kids, wife, never worked, 2 cars. Nowadays a teacher couple working can perhaps afford an apartment, 1 car and a cat. There are millions of these stories where people 30 or 40 or 50 years ago managed to get much more for much less education and work. We have to be more educated, work longer and harder, work more, fight against more competition to get 1/3 of the previous generations. That's a fact, and I am tired that I have it easier because I have cheap electronics and can make a cheap vacation. This was the point I always made to anyone who says but now you have computers or some other inane argument. Yes, we have computers, and we know how to use them, which means we get done in a day what they got done in a week. But we don't get to sit around doing nothing for the rest of the week, because fuck us. Also, when my parents would say we had to say LLO-FIRSTHO and I remind them that if I sold literally everything I had ever owned it would not be enough for a deposit on a 1-bed flat in Shitsville. I was just talking about this with my cousins earlier today. The fact that our grandparents were able to afford a 3-bedroom house, raise 4 kids and retire in their 60s with her being a stay-at-home mom and him being a construction worker sounds absolutely unbelievable to all of us. My grandfather supported a family on just his supervisor job at a General Motors factory. My grandfather was a history teacher from 1970 to 2002 and had 4 kids, 2 cars, and my grandmother only worked part-time after my mom and uncles were all in school because she needed something to do during the day. My wife and I each have 2 jobs and are barely scraping by with 3 kids. Yup. Even my dad admits this. Back in the 80s he made around $20 an hour. Could buy a house, a brand new car, and had money for vacation every year, even with my mom staying at home with us newborns. Now I make more than double that and am in no position to buy a house yet, even with my wife also working. And forget about a vacation for at least a few years SMH. When I started working in the mid-90s, I remember having to physically go to the business, fill out the application, and if I was lucky I'd get the interview that day, and luckier if I got the job that day as well. I was always told since I started that you work hard and you'll get your rewards in pay. But that's not always the case. I've since found out that it won't matter how hard you work, it's who you know, who you FCK and who you schmooze with. You'll be lucky if you make an impression on someone who'll pay you your worth. I think the additional have to pay costs are up compared to years ago. Medical bills, everyone is on prescriptions now, insurances of all sorts, fire, house, mortgage, life, health, car, etc., taxes of all sorts, property, sales, state, local. More add-on costs, cell phone, internet, power, and water. Little things no one will acknowledge. Few years ago the power comp charged under $10 a month just to be connected to natural gas, now that same service is over $50. They may sound like much, but add them all up and it's substantial. What do you mean it's BS? It's common knowledge and very widely discussed that this is a very difficult time to live in if you didn't inherit wealth or luck into a cushy job. Even highly qualified people with great skill sets are struggling. The real question is how things got this way and why the middle class and working class allowed the oneers to let it happen. There's a bit of survivorship bias going on here. You know about the boomers who have big houses and power and presence in society. You don't know about the boomers who are dying unnoticed in nursing homes or already died alone in Skid Row flop houses, or from the various cancers that those good, solid factory jobs gave to so many of them. Real life today isn't what you see on a social media influencer's feed. Real life decades ago wasn't what you see in Disney movies or on magazine covers. Generational politics is a distraction, class politics is what we should be focusing on. Seriously. Life was easier even 5 years ago. Now double or triple that. Of course they had it easier, they just like to think that they had it harder. My dad walked out of high school and right into a job, where he worked until he retired. My mom never had to work. The man has never had to make a resume. He made $25 in the 80s and was able to retire in his early 50s. No student debt. Bought a house for less than $100,000, which just sold for $850,000 last year. I'm F51. I was an adult 30 years ago. I bought my first one-bedroom home for $30,000 in 1994. I sold it after I had my daughter and bought a lovely Victorian with hardwood floors 100 years old that needed some work for $59,900. My teaching job gave me the credit I needed. I was making $30,000. True, homes were rather cheap in the area known for its lower cost of living, but still. It was easier to make ends meet, and any adult that says differently is full of crap. I have a PhD now and my job pays crap and it's in my field. I could never dream to buy a home these days. All the while our parents are holding on to their wealth for dear life, promising inheritance, when we all know the nursing home is going to gobble up that inheritance. Nursing homes are scams. Can make a cheap vacation. You guys are getting vacations? 30-40 years ago, many of us worked very hard and furthered our education without $100,000 debt for life, but it got us somewhere. A solid job. A house, a pension. A living wage. There was a goal. It wasn't work 60 hours a week plus a side gig just to scrape by and barely eat. I don't know how people don't remember that. I just kinda hope that the economy and workforce will eventually burst and correct itself before I get too old to work anymore. It is kinda weird how overwhelming the amount of evidence is out there on our regressing quality of life, and yet, some people are still in denial. Lol. What the fuck do we do? This is unsustainable. The entire country can't become homeless. What are we gonna do? Riot and eat the rich? We did, compared to millennials and zoomers. Anyone could get a job in the 90s. You had a safe society. Schools were not crack dens yet. And you would have skills and education before the economy went shitty. Yes, we got exposed to a lot which aged us. But it ain't like now. The value of the US dollar has decreased by 86 in the last 50 years. So today for every dollar you have, you only have the buying power of 14 or 14 cents of the same dollar 50 years ago. In essence, you could do more than 6 times the amount of purchasing 50 years ago than today with the same money. So yes, it is BS that financially they had it harder than you. I was at Walmart for a while and fired me WXD. Upon reapplying to places and redoing my resume, I've been noticing how many applications I've done. Compared to a few years ago, I did around 60 and got around 5 to 10 interviews. This time around I've done around 110 and maybe had 3 to 5 interviews in a 2-week period. Think about this: the term postal came about because postal workers were going batshit because every day was a busy and full day. They never got any downtime at work. Now America has daily mass shootings and we can't figure out the fucking problem. My great-aunt bought a 2BR condo in Queens, NYC for $42,000 in the 80s, that side of the family sold it for $750,000 last year. 35 years ago you could walk into a restaurant and ask if they needed people and start that evening and walk out at the end of the night with enough tips for a monthly car payment. You can't do that today. Greedy capitalists and too many kids. Capitalists need to maintain a certain profit margin, so if you'll keep pumping out children there will be less for everyone. Even if we were to defeat the greedy capitalists, stop pumping out children, because there will still be less and less for everyone. White, middle-class people certainly had it easier. I got the same degree as my father, and my starting job paid 2x what he made when he started 20 years earlier, except I had 4x the loans at a higher interest rate for the exact same degree and same years in school.